When I was probably like 14, I read this book in school which changed my perspective on life. Now, this book wasn't anything crazy. It wasn't some deep philosophical musing. It was just a story about a girl immigrating to the United States. A story about her life and her hardships. This book was called Esperanza Rising, and at that age, it was a book I'm glad I had the motivation to read. Because something in that book, one specific thing, has really stuck with me. Near the end of the book, or maybe more like the middle, it presents this analogy for the reader. It's an analogy about life and suffering and loss and survival, but also about love and light and everything good about the world. It makes this case that life is like a series of mountains and valleys. There are highs and lows, and they often run in sequence. It's like sometimes you feel like nothing will ever change. You're in this deep valley and the light won't reach you, and you feel like you'll never be capable of climbing out of it. As if all the good in the world, everything meaningful and worth something is beyond your reach, and to grasp at it once again would be just some exercise in futility. Then other times, you feel as though you're the king of the world, atop some sort of mountain looking down, acknowledging how far you've come and what it's all been for. Most of us, for most of our lives, are somewhere along the line between the two, climbing a mountain or heading down towards a valley. At the time I read this book, I was in a really dark place. I had just started developing my health issues, I felt socially distant, I had very few friends, and I saw nothing but stress and disappointment in my future. For a while there, I began living just for the day-to-day, for those few pleasures like food and video games which could satisfy me to some extent. It was like I'd kind of given up hope of anything changing. I'd lost faith in myself and in my future, and so looking forward, imagining my life, I saw nothing but darkness. When you don't give yourself a chance to change the world, when you let that darkness consume you and see things through a perspective of always being at the bottom of the valley, then there's really very little you can do to make progress. I think in life, when you're in a dark place, a deep pit, what it takes is that faith to start climbing. You look up and you see this mountain to climb, this obstacle to overcome, and it's frightening. It's almost like you don't even believe you could do it. You aren't even sure if you care for what you'd receive at the top. It's like a lot of people find themselves stuck at the bottom of valleys. At one point in time, they had a high point, however long ago, and perhaps from some perspective this high was less of a mountain and more of a hill. But despite that, in every life, there is some amount of contrast, some amount of diversity, some amount of choice and commitment which can change things. Maybe you can't do it all at once. Maybe some mountains can't be climbed. But every valley can be navigated, and every darkness can be lit. It's like, at the end of the day, you really only have yourself. When everything is said and done, the points are tallied, and the game is done, it's really just you. It can be isolating to realize, but it's true in the sense that this world is an individual experience that we merely share with each other. Everything can be taken away. Everyone can be taken away. But while you're still you, and you're still breathing, there's at least one choice in every moment to turn inward and begin asking yourself the big questions. There's this book I quote endlessly, but I'll do it again here to illustrate a point. In the 1940s, there was a Jewish psychologist interned in a concentration camp during World War II. This man's name was Viktor Frankl, and he spent many years there in that camp documenting his experiences and the universal experience of man's struggle and suffering. The culmination of his work was a book called Man's Search for Meaning, in which he details at length how a person faced with the utmost of suffering in the human world might still find within them some meaning to overcome or endure their challenges. He said that when everything was taken away, when his family was gone, his possessions had been taken, his head had been shaved, and his identity had been replaced by a number, that he realized all he had left, all that a person had which couldn't be stolen from them. He called this the last of human freedoms, and it was in short the ability to decide for yourself, through your own internal command, how you would decide to respond to the world around you. In short, this conclusion he made was one which the Stoics had realized centuries earlier, which every person who suffers must someday come to learn. In life, we have nothing inside our own domain of control. We have nothing in the way of personal power but us, our own self, our own perception of the world. If someone comes to you and keys your car, and breaks your knees, and steals your wallet, and leaves you there on the ground in the mud, at that point, what can you do about the past? What can be done about what happened? Of course, you can call the police. send for an ambulance, file a claim with your insurance. But ahead of it all, even then, even in the worst of circumstances, you can still choose to be peaceful. Not for some higher virtue, not to emulate perfection or because you feel like you should, but for your own satisfaction, your own equilibrium, and your own sense of peace. The Stoic philosophers would argue that in any situation, however awful, we maintain the ability, however hard, to decide the way in which we respond to the world around us. As Marcus Aurelius once said, nothing is good or bad inherently, for it is our judgments which make them so. However bad your life has gotten, however hopeless things appear to be, I want you first to know that you have options. There is a way to start climbing. It won't be easy, it won't be fun, and there is never a guarantee, but there is a hope if you let yourself believe in it. As the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why can bear any how." It is not the suffering itself which defeats you, but the lack of meaning which fuels you to fight your way out. In personal experience, I can say that at times I had no hope and no reason. That was when I was stuck. Once I found a reason, once I realized what it was all about, then it didn't feel so hard to begin climbing again. Although I'm still somewhere along in that climb, I haven't gotten anywhere quite yet, that progress is still motivating. It's real and shows you how far you've come from the valley beneath you. When you start to make progress, you'll realize just how blessed you really are, how many things you really had to be hopeful for. When you've restored that faith and you see things with clarity, then it isn't this struggle for meaning, it's a struggle against the world and your circumstances, and in a way it's a battle much more rewarding to fight because you know why you're fighting it. I can't tell you guys what that meaning is for you. I can't lead you towards your why, your reason for fighting, because it's a different story for everyone in a way. For some people it's service, for others it's wealth or security, for some it's creation or progress or prestige, for a lot of people it's family. But I can tell you this, in your darkest moments a lot becomes clear. It did for me. And that was like this filtering of everything I cared about and everything I didn't. And it was like suffering taught me what really mattered, what could keep me going when I was really in the thick of it. For me, it was art, creation, storytelling, and helping people. I wanted to paint a picture in the mind of others, express a feeling I struggle to put into words. In a way, I'm grateful for the time I spent in this valley, because it taught me to help people, taught me the things I valued, and how I would use them. Before you lose hope or give in to despair, I want you to take a breath. Take a few deep breaths and do a little soul searching. Before you can climb your way out of this pit that you're in, you need to ask yourself some big questions and find the things which feel worth fighting for.